Israel's two-week aid blockade leaves Gaza dependent on charities and international aid. The United States continues airstrikes against the Houthis while the group's leader threatens to target U.S. ships. And U.S. President Donald Trump is to speak with his Russian counterpart on Tuesday. It's 10 a.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Israel's two-week-long aid blockade has continued. Many have resorted to charities to get hot meals for the children. The west of Gaza's population of over 2 million dependent on international aid. About 600 aid trucks have entered daily since the ceasefire began on January 19th. Aid groups have expressed concerns that gains they made during the 6-week ceasefire to avert famine in parts of the Strip have been diminishing. Palestinians in Gaza City are struggling to find regular supplies of fresh water, with many waiting for days to fill up makeshift water containers. For 2 weeks, Israel has barred the delivery of food, fuel, and other supplies as roughly 2 million Palestinians, and cut electricity to a desalination plant providing water to part of the territory a week ago to pressure Hamas to accept the ceasefire's second phase. Israeli occupation forces have continued their wide-scale assault on the city of Jenin and its refugee camp for the 55th consecutive day. Israeli forces set fire to homes in the Jenin refugee camp, blocked Jenin government hospital, and stationed tanks around the camp. Bulldozers razed streets, while raids continued in nearby villages. Since January 21st, the assault has killed 34 Palestinians, displaced 120 homes. Israeli occupation forces have continued their offensive in the city of Tulkarm and its refugee camp for the 49th consecutive day, and in the Nur Shems refugee camp to the east for the 36th day. Israeli forces demolished homes in Tulkarm and Nur Shems refugee camps, displacing over 24,000 residents. Troops raided neighborhoods, issued eviction notices, seized homes as military posts, and set fires. The offensive has damaged infrastructure and killed 13 Palestinians, including women and children. Israeli occupation forces have stormed the village of Nabi Saleh, northwest of Ramallah. Israeli forces stormed the village on foot and spread out through its streets. The forces fired live ammunition at a vehicle belonging to a resident while it was parked next to his home, causing material damage to the vehicle. No injuries or detentions have been reported. Israeli occupation forces have continued razing large areas of Palestinian land in the Wadi al-Matwi area, located near the town of Salfit in the central West Bank for the fourth consecutive day. The land clearing is part of efforts to create a new colonial road leading to a colonial outpost established on land belonging to the nearby village of Farha. Israeli colonists have raised the Israeli flag along the road as bulldozers continue to uproot olive trees and destroy the land. Additionally, Israeli forces are continuing to block the Iron Gate at the northern entrance to Salfit for the fifth consecutive day, further restricting access for local Palestinian residents. Two Israeli airstrikes in the northern town of Beit Lahia near the border have killed at least 9. Section Center, a local watchdog, said the dead included 3 Palestinian journalists who were documenting aid distribution. The Israeli occupation military said it struck 2 people operating a drone that, according to the army, posed a threat to soldiers in the area. It said it launched another strike at a group of people who came to collect the drone equipment. The death toll in Gaza has risen to more than 48,500, the majority being women and children, since the Israeli genocidal war began in October 2023. Over the past 24 hours, hospitals in Gaza have received the bodies or remains of 15 victims after being pulled out of the rubble, in addition to 14 newly reported fatalities. The number of injuries has also climbed to more than 112,000. Meantime, many victims remain trapped under the rubble, with emergency and civil defense teams unable to reach them. Although a ceasefire in Gaza took effect on January 19th, casualties have continued to be reported across various parts of the region since its implementation, as Israel continued to breach the agreement. UNICEF's Middle East and North Africa Regional Director, Edouard Biguet-Beder, has highlighted the severe impact of the ongoing conflict on Palestinian children following his visit to the West Bank and Gaza. He warned that 1 million children lack necessities due to restrictions, while over 200 Palestinians and 3 Israeli children have been killed in the West Bank and East Jerusalem since October 2023, the highest toll in 2 decades. Biguet-Beder urged all parties to protect children, uphold international law, and ensure swift humanitarian aid delivery to prevent further casualties. Hundreds of Palestinians have gathered for a Ramadan iftar among the ruins of their destroyed homes in Beit Lahia, as well as the ruins of the city's Salim Abu Muslim Mosque. Organizers say the iftar gathering is a message by the people to reject any attempt at displacing Palestinians from Gaza, referring to comments made by U.S. President Donald Trump. At least 9 Palestinians, including 3 local journalists, were killed in an Israeli airstrike on Gaza's northern Beit Lahia town, the local health ministry said, as Hamas leaders held ceasefire talks with mediators in Cairo. Occupied West Bank city of Nablus have said that Ramadan this year has been quieter than normal amid Israeli military operations. Markets in Nablus witnessed fewer buyers in the region. Lack of sales, saying that Israeli checkpoints and operations in the West Bank, as well as the political situation in the country, are affecting the market. An Israeli offensive has been ongoing in different parts of the West Bank since January 2025. Israeli Benjamin Netanyahu has told the head of the country's Shin Bet domestic security service, Ronan Bar, that he plans to propose his dismissal to the government this week. In the statement, Netanyahu said that he had long lost his confidence in Bar and that trust in the head of the domestic security service was especially crucial at a time of war. Former National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir supported the decision. However, opposition leaders Yair Golan and Yair Lapid criticized the move, with Lapid planning to challenge it in Israel's Supreme Court. Shin Bet is currently part of an investigation into possible links between employees in Netanyahu's office and Qatar, which has been mediating ceasefire talks between Hamas and Israel. Israeli protesters and relatives of detainees have rallied in Tel Aviv demanding a detainee deal and ceasefire with Hamas. During the rally, protesters criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's move to dismiss the head of the Shin Bet domestic intelligence service and called it a war against the detainees. Netanyahu said he would ask the government to approve his dismissal of the head of the Shin Bet domestic intelligence service, Ronan Bar. The U.S. Central Command has said its forces were continuing operations against Yemen's Houthis after Washington said it will keep striking the group until it ends attacks on shipping. In a video released by the U.S. Central Command, fighter jets were shown taking off from an unidentified location. The airstrikes, which the Houthi-run health ministry said killed at least 53 people, are the biggest U.S. military operation in the Middle East since President Donald Trump took office in January. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has said that U.S. strikes in Yemen had targeted multiple leaders and took them out. The strikes, which one U.S. official told Reuters might continue for weeks, are the biggest U.S. military operation in the Middle East since President Donald Trump took office in January. Asked how these strikes differed from those carried out under the Biden administration, Waltz said that these were not kind of pinprick, back and forth, but what ultimately proved to be effectless attacks. Yemen's Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi has said his forces will target U.S. ships in the Red Sea as long as the U.S. continues its attacks on Yemen. He said in a televised speech, if the U.S. continues its aggression, it will continue the escalation. Al-Houthi's speech came hours after the group's spokesperson, Yahya Sari'a, said they targeted the U.S. aircraft carrier U.S. airstrikes were a blatant aggression in a televised statement. Sari'a said that the group had targeted the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman and its warships in the Red Sea with ballistic missiles and drones in response to the U.S. attacks. He also said the Houthis would target all American warships in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, that if U.S. aggression continued, they would escalate. The commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, Hossein Salami, has vowed to deliver a decisive and devastating response to their threats. Salami also said Yemen's Houthis take strategic and operational decisions on their own and assume responsibility for everything they do. U.S. President Donald Trump launched strikes against Yemen's Houthis on Saturday, March 15th, over the group's attacks against ships in the Red Sea, warning if Houthi attacks did not stop, hell would rain down upon them, nothing they have ever seen before. And now we move on to the latest developments in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. US President Donald Trump has said he plans to speak to Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. During a flight back to Washington from Florida, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that significant progress had been made over the weekend. He expressed hope for ending the conflict, acknowledging both possibilities while emphasizing a strong chance of success. He added that he may make a possible announcement on Ukraine-Russia talks by Tuesday and highlighted that land and power plants are central to Russia-Ukraine deal talks.
We'll be talking about land, we'll be talking about power plants. That's it's a big question.
US President Donald Trump has said he was being sarcastic when he, as a presidential candidate, declared he would resolve the crisis in Ukraine within 24 hours. Trump said that it would be bad news for this world if Russian President Vladimir Putin didn't agree to a ceasefire. Trump is trying to win Putin's support for a 30-day ceasefire proposal that Ukraine accepted last week, as both sides continued trading heavy aerial strikes through the weekend and Russia moved closer to ejecting Ukrainian forces from their months-old foothold in the western Russian region of Kursk. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced the appointed Major General Andriy Natov as Ukraine's chief of the General Staff. Zelensky said Natov would be tasked with making Ukrainian troops more combat ready. Zelensky also said he had spoken to Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and discussed sanctions on Russia and the G7 foreign ministers meeting that took place in the remote tourist town of La Malbaie, Canada.
А також більш активна розбудова координаційної системи.
Now we move to Rehem Morsi in our newsroom for the economic updates. Rehem.
Thank you so much, Hani. We move on to the latest in the economic news. US President Donald Trump has said he has no intentions of creating exemptions on steel and aluminium tariffs. Speaking Air Force One, Trump said reciprocal and sectoral tariffs will be imposed on April 2nd. He added that reciprocal duties on US trading partners would come alongside auto duties. According European nations' global trade hit a record $33 trillion in 2024, marking a 3.7% increase from 2023. The growth was driven by services, which rose 9% and accounted for nearly 60% of the total growth, with trade in goods growing 2%. Developing economies outpaced developing nations in 2024, with imports and exports rising 4% for the year and 2% in the fourth quarter. Foreign trade for China and India both showed strong growth momentum in the fourth quarter of 2024. The latest data from the People's Bank of China indicates that social financing grew rapidly in the first 2 months of this year, providing increased support for the real economy. As of the end of February, China's financing stock reached 417.29 trillion yuan, which is equivalent to 57.2% increase from the previous year. M2, a broad measure of the money supply that includes cash in circulation and all deposits, rose 7% year on year to approximately 320.52 trillion yuan by last month. In the first 2 months of 2025, China issued 6.14 trillion yuan in a new yuan-denominated loan. Senior Chinese official He Lifeng has met with former U.S. Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson in Beijing, and the two sides exchanged views on both China, U.S. economic and trade relations, and the global economy. And achieved remarkable results, while market expectations continue to improve, and added that domestic demand potential and internal circulation space are huge, noting that the U.S.-China relations are very important and green transformation is the general trend. Paulson said that the Paulson Institute is willing to continue to contribute positively to the stability of U.S.-China relations and green and low carbon development. Now we go back to Henny in our studio.
Thank you, Raham. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our news bulletin for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. Israel's 2-week aid blockade leaves Gaza dependent on charities and international aid. The United States continues airstrikes against the Houthis, while the group's leader threatens to target U.S. ships. And U.S. President Donald Trump is to speak with his Russian counterpart on Tuesday. These are all the news we have for now, but please don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Qnews.